The station's market was always alive with sound. Hundreds of voices filled the long hallways, each one different in tone and language. Traders from a dozen worlds called out to buyers. Mechanical carts rolled between stalls, carrying goods packed in glowing containers. Lanterns made of crystal hung from high beams, reflecting colored lights on the walls. Lyra walked at her mother's side, her small hand clutching the corner of her mother's robe. She was young, curious about everything she saw. Her eyes followed the shapes of jars filled with spices, the tall cages that held singing birds from a desert moon, and the cloth banners that moved with the breath of passing crowds. Her mother smiled gently at her curiosity, though she kept a protective arm around the girl. Around her mother's neck hung a silver amulet. It was small but finely made, with lines that twisted together in patterns of stars. Lyra knew this object well. Her mother had often told her stories about it. The amulet had belonged to their ancestors and was passed from one generation to the next. It was said to carry not only their family's memory but also a spark of wisdom from the old times. The market seemed peaceful, but Lyra's mother always carried the amulet close. She had told Lyra once, things that carry history must be guarded, because history is not for sale. Lyra never fully understood the weight of those words, but she could see the care in her mother's eyes whenever she touched the chain. They stopped at a stall selling woven cloth. A friendly merchant with 4 arms laid out fabrics that shimmered like water. Lyra reached out to touch one, and the fabric shifted colors beneath her fingers. She laughed in delight, and the sound made her mother smile. For a moment, everything felt safe. But safety in the market was fragile. At the far end of the row, shadows moved with unusual speed. A group of figures, cloaked in dark fabric, pushed roughly through the crowd. Most people stepped back without question. Their voices hushed as if everyone knew to stay away. Lyra felt her mother's hand tighten. She looked up and saw her mother's face change, the gentle expression replaced with one of quiet worry. The figures came closer. Lyra tried to hide behind her mother, but curiosity pulled her eyes forward. She saw gloved hands, sharp eyes beneath the cloaks, and the way they looked not at the stalls, not at the food, not at the goods, but at the amulet on her mother's neck. It happened quickly. One of the cloaked figures stepped forward and reached out. Lyra's mother tried to step back, but the chain was already in their grip. Lyra cried out as the struggle began. The crowd around them backed away, pretending not to see. The merchant folded his arms and turned his head. Even the guards at the far gates did not move. The figure yanked hard. In the pull, the silver chain snapped, and the amulet fell into the raider's hand. Lyra tried to grab it back, but her small fingers caught only her own shirt. The fabric tore across her shoulder, leaving her frozen in shock. She stumbled backward into her mother's arms. Her mother called out, but the raiders had already begun to run. They darted into the narrow alleys between stalls, their cloaks flaring as they disappeared into the maze of the market. The amulet was gone. Lyra's mother sank to her knees, holding her daughter close. The girl felt the warmth of her mother's arms, but also the cold emptiness where the amulet had been. She saw tears gather in her mother's eyes. It was not only an object that had been taken. It was memory, family, and honor. Around them, the market returned to its usual noise. People glanced at the scene but quickly looked away. No one wanted trouble with raiders. No one wanted to challenge them. To most, it was easier to pretend nothing had happened. But Lyra felt the silence in her chest. She pressed her face into her mother's robe and whispered, "Why did no one help us?" Her mother had no answer. She only held her tighter, whispering soft words of comfort, though her voice shook. And yet, not everyone turned away. In the back of the crowd stood a man who had watched everything. He was human, a trader who had come to the market with only a cart of simple tools and spare parts. His name was Tamash. He was not tall compared to some of the other species around him. He carried no weapon, no armor, and no title. But his eyes followed the raiders as they disappeared, and his hands clenched into fists at his side. He had seen the fear in the girl's eyes, the sorrow on the mother's face, and the way everyone else ignored it. Something stirred inside him, a voice that refused to let him look away. He had lived through many places where the strong took from the weak, but he had also learned one truth: silence made injustice stronger. As the market settled again, Tamash stepped forward. He did not know Lyra's name or her mother's story, but he knew what had been taken was precious. He also knew the raiders had chosen their moment because they believed no one would interfere. He was only one man. He had no allies here. But as he looked at the girl and her mother, he felt a decision take root in his chest. He could not stand with the rest of the crowd and do nothing. He would follow the raiders. He would try to bring back what was lost. The market lights glowed above, colors shifting across the ceiling, but to Tamash they seemed dim. His path was already clear. Without another thought, he began to move in the same direction the raiders had gone, his steps firm and steady. Lyra, still holding onto her mother, glanced up through her tears. For a moment, she caught sight of the human walking away with determined shoulders. She did not know who he was, but in that instant she felt the smallest spark of hope, like a single light in a place full of shadows. And the story of courage was about to begin. Tamash moved quickly through the crowded lanes of the station. His cart of tools and supplies was left behind at the market, but he did not look back. His focus was only on the shadows that had slipped away with the amulet. The raiders had chosen narrow alleys where the lanterns did not reach, but Tamash had seen enough of their cloaks to know where they went. The market noise faded behind him as he entered the side passages. Here the walls were rough, patched with old repairs and cracked plates. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping from time to time, and the smell of oil mixed with stale air. The wide and colorful stalls were gone. In their place were small doors, broken signs, and wandering shapes who kept their eyes low. Tamash's boots made quiet sounds against the floor. He did not call out or make noise. He knew the raiders would not hesitate to vanish deeper if they noticed him too soon. He walked with steady steps, scanning each turn, each shadow, trying to keep them within reach. Behind him, the market slowly returned to life. People whispered to each other, but their whispers carried more curiosity than concern. "The human is following them," some said. "Does he not know who they are?" others asked. Few believed he would return. Most thought he was walking to his own end. Lyra and her mother had stayed near the merchant's stall. The girl held her mother's hand tightly, her eyes wide. She asked in a soft voice, "Why did he go after them?" Her mother did not know what to answer. She could only whisper, "Because some hearts cannot stay silent." Tamash moved deeper into the maze. He did not know the names of these passages, but he remembered the way the raiders had turned. His mind was sharp, and though the alleys twisted, he marked each corner in his memory. He had once worked in mines on a different world, where tunnels ran like veins under stone. That training helped him now. He did not lose his path. At one point he paused. Ahead, faint sounds echoed. He heard quick steps, the scrape of boots against metal, and the low murmur of voices. The raiders were close. His heart beat faster, but his face stayed calm. Fear was natural, but he knew fear could not be his master. He took a slow breath and moved forward. The alleys grew tighter. Broken crates lay scattered, and torn cloth hung from the walls. A few figures noticed him passing. They did not speak, but their eyes followed him with a mix of surprise and doubt. It was not common to see a human in this part of the station, and even less common to see one moving with such determination. Tomasz finally reached a wider crossing. He stepped into the open space and saw a flicker of movement at the far edge. The cloaks of the raiders disappeared into another passage. Without waiting, he followed. Every step carried weight. He thought about the girl's face when she clung to her mother, about her voice when she cried out. He thought about the amulet, shining under the dim lights of the market. He did not know the full meaning of that object, but he knew enough it was not just a piece of metal. It was part of their life, their memory. Losing it would wound them deeply. His thoughts also reached further. He knew how the station worked. Power rested with those who took, and silence gave them strength. If no one resisted, the raiders would grow bolder, and more families would lose what was theirs. Tomasz did not want to see that. Even if he could not change the whole station, he could make a choice here and now. The air grew cooler as he advanced. The lights above grew fewer, and shadows stretched longer. At one corner, Tomasz stopped and looked at the ground. Dust had been kicked up. The marks showed the direction of several boots. He followed them carefully. Time passed slowly in those passages. Tomasz did not rush blindly. He knew the danger of traps, ambushes, and dead ends. He moved with care, listening, watching. His mind balanced two truths: he was only one man, yet one man could be enough. As he went on, he remembered his past. He had once lived on a frontier world where settlers faced harsh storms and wild creatures. Many times, survival had depended on one person's decision to act while others hesitated. He carried that lesson with him always. Sometimes one step forward was worth more than 1,000 words. Back at the market, Lyra's mother spoke with the guard, but the guard only shook his head. "The raiders have their places," he said. "It is not wise to chase them. Better to forget and move on." The words cut deeply, but before she could reply, Lyra pulled her sleeve. "The human will not forget," the girl said. "I saw it in his eyes." The mother looked into her daughter's face and found hope there. That small light kept her standing when despair tried to bend her down. Meanwhile, Tomasz finally reached a point where the alleys opened into a dim hall. He stopped at the entrance, staying hidden in the shadow. Inside, he saw the raiders. They were gathered together, speaking in low tones. One of them held the amulet, raising it under a lamp. The silver reflected the light, its patterns glowing faintly as if alive. Tomasz watched carefully. He counted them 5 in total. They looked strong, armed with short blades and strange devices at their belts. They were not simple thieves. They carried themselves like a group that had done this many times before. He could not step forward yet. He needed to understand what they planned. His breath was steady, his eyes fixed. He pressed his back to the wall, letting the shadows hide him. For now, his task was to learn. Later would come the moment to act. And as he stood there, the thought returned again: he was only one human. But if he did nothing, then nothing would ever change. If he acted, then perhaps the story of the amulet would not end in loss. He had already chosen his path when he left the market. Now, standing in the dim hall with danger only a few steps away, Tomasz felt the weight of that choice settle fully on his shoulders. He did not turn back. The raiders laughed softly among themselves, unaware that someone watched them. The amulet shone in their hands, a light that seemed far too bright for such a place. And Tomasz, hidden but firm, prepared himself for what was to come. The chase was not over. It had only begun. The hall where the raiders had gathered was dim and full of echo. Tomasz stayed still in the shadow, his eyes sharp. He did not move closer yet. 5 of them were too many to face at once. Instead, he listened. Their voices carried across the hall in a low growl of different tongues. Some words he could not understand, but he caught enough to know they were speaking about the amulet. One raider lifted the silver piece higher, turning it so the faint patterns reflected light across the wall. Another leaned closer, tracing the designs with a gloved finger. Their words held a mix of greed and awe. It was clear this was not only a stolen treasure to them. They believed it held something more, something hidden. Tomasz felt his chest tighten. He did not know the true power of the amulet, but he could see that to them it was not just metal to be sold. They wanted to unlock it. That meant danger, not only for Lyra's family but maybe for many others. He stepped back into the passage. He needed to stay close but not be seen. His boots touched the ground with care as he moved around the edge of the hall. The raiders did not notice him. They were too busy with the amulet, too busy whispering plans. The air was colder here. Drops of water fell from pipes above, landing on the floor with soft taps. Tomasz followed the sound of their voices as they began to leave the hall. They carried the amulet with them, moving deeper into the station's maze. Tomasz followed. The path grew tighter again, lined with old metal plates. Dust rose with each step. Faint lights buzzed from broken lamps. The raiders moved fast, but Tomasz kept them within sight, never too close, never too far. He kept to the edges, blending with shadows as best he could. His heart stayed steady, though each turn made the risk greater. At one sharp corner, Tomasz nearly lost them. The group vanished for a moment, and he feared they had slipped away. He quickened his pace, only to hear their boots again from a stairwell ahead. He breathed quietly, thankful he had not lost them. The stairs led down into a lower level of the station. Tomasz followed, his hand brushing against the wall for balance. The air grew heavy, filled with the scent of rust and oil. He knew this was no public place. Few traders or families came down here. It was the kind of space raiders could claim as their own. As he descended, he thought again of the girl's face. Her wide eyes, filled with fear, had left a mark in his memory. He thought of her mother's sorrow, how her voice had broken when the amulet was torn away. These thoughts pushed him forward when his mind whispered that turning back would be safer. The lower level was darker. Only a few lamps lit the path, and some flickered weakly. The walls here were damp, patched with grime. Pipes twisted overhead like tangled roots. Tomasz saw no one else, only the raiders ahead. They reached a door, heavy and wide, marked with faded symbols. One raider pressed a panel, and the door slid open with a groan. They stepped inside. Tomasz stopped, waiting until the last figure disappeared. Then he moved quickly to the edge of the doorway and looked in. The space inside was larger than he expected. It looked like an abandoned storage hall, filled with broken crates, piles of scrap, and old machines that no longer worked. The raiders had turned it into a hidden base. Cloth banners hung from the beams, and small lights burned in metal bowls. At the center of the room stood a table, and on that table they placed the amulet. Tomash stayed in the doorway, hidden behind the wall. He could see them gather around the table, their heads close together. One pulled out a small device, shaped like a cube, and placed the amulet above it. The cube hummed with energy, and a faint glow spread across the silver patterns. The raiders whispered with excitement. Tomash could not hear every word, but he understood enough. They were testing the amulet, trying to draw something from it. His breath slowed. He knew he could not rush in now. 5 against 1 was not a fight he could win. He needed a chance, a mistake from them, or an opening. Until then, his task was to wait. He crouched lower, keeping his eyes fixed on the table. The glow from the amulet reflected across the raiders' faces. They leaned closer, their shadows stretching across the walls. The hum from the cube grew louder, filling the room with steady vibration. Tomash thought of the market above, full of life and color, so far from this hidden place. He thought of Lyra, who might even now be waiting, hoping for his return. The image of her small hands clutching her mother's robe gave him strength. But waiting in silence was hard. Each passing moment stretched long, and his legs grew tense. Still, he held his position, knowing patience was part of courage. At last, the device flickered. The glow dimmed, and the raiders cursed in frustration. The amulet slipped slightly from the cube. One of them picked it up and shouted at the others. Their voices rose in anger. Tomash leaned forward, trying to catch more of their words. He heard them speak of moving soon, of taking the amulet to another place. This hall was only a stop. They planned to carry it deeper into the station, maybe to a ship waiting for them. The thought struck Tomash sharply. If they reached a ship, the amulet might be lost forever. He could not let that happen. He stepped back into the corridor, his mind racing. He needed to stay on their trail. If he struck too early, he would be outnumbered. But if he waited too long, they would vanish. As he thought, the door of the hall began to close. Tomash moved quickly, slipping behind a pile of crates near the entrance. The door sealed with a heavy thud. For now, he was locked out. But he did not give up. He pressed his ear to the metal and heard their voices still inside. He could wait. He could follow when they left again. His will was firm. The shadows of the lower level surrounded him. The hum of machines echoed faintly in the distance. Tomash crouched near the door, patient, steady, and ready. He was one man in a place of danger, but his heart told him that one man could still make a difference. And so the chase continued. Tomash stayed crouched near the sealed door for a long time. The cold metal pressed against his back, but he did not move. He listened carefully, waiting for the raiders to stir inside their hidden hall. Faint voices reached him through the wall, sometimes loud with anger, sometimes quiet with plotting. He could not hear every word, but he understood their intent. They had not finished with the amulet. He thought of the girl again. Lyra's face had been full of fear when the raiders had torn the amulet away. Her mother's eyes had carried sorrow deeper than words. Those images stayed sharp in Tomash's mind. They gave him patience, even in the silence of the dark corridor. At last, the door hissed. A heavy sound echoed as it slid open. Tomash pressed himself low, hiding behind a pile of broken crates. The raiders came out one by one. Their boots thudded against the metal floor. Each carried a weapon at their belt, and their cloaks brushed the ground as they moved. In the hands of one raider shone the amulet, glowing faintly with silver light. Tomash did not act. Not yet. He let them pass, counting their steps, watching the way they moved. They headed deeper into the station, their voices hushed but steady. When the last of them disappeared around the corner, Tomasz rose and followed. The passages ahead were darker still. Pipes leaked steam, and the walls shook from distant engines. Few lamps burned here, and those that did flickered with weak light. Tomasz moved like a shadow, always a short distance behind the raiders. His steps were light, his breath slow. They led him through narrow turns and across bridges that hung above empty shafts. The deeper they went, the more Tomasz realized this was not part of the station most people ever saw. It felt like a forgotten underworld, abandoned by traders and travelers. Finally, the raiders reached another door. This one was taller, carved with strange marks, and stronger than the first. Two of them pressed their hands against a panel, and with a heavy groan the door opened. A pale light spilled out from within. Tomasz waited until they were inside, then slipped forward. He stood in the doorway and looked. The chamber beyond was vast. It stretched high, with walls that curved like the inside of a dome. Old machines lined the edges, silent and broken, their surfaces covered with dust. In the center stood a wide platform, raised slightly above the ground. The raiders gathered there, placing the amulet carefully on a stand that rose from the platform. The light of the amulet reflected across the chamber. Its patterns glowed more strongly here, as if the place itself answered to it. The raiders whispered, their eyes wide with hunger for what might be revealed. Tomasz stepped back quickly, pressing himself against the wall outside. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed clear. He understood something now. This was not only a hideout. This chamber had been built long ago, maybe by those who had once created the amulet. The raiders had found it and claimed it as their own. He peered back inside. One raider brought out a small box, covered with wires. Another unfolded a device shaped like a ring. They placed both near the amulet, adjusting dials and pressing switches. The hum of energy filled the chamber. Faint streams of light rose from the platform, forming patterns in the air. The raiders stepped back, watching with awe. Tomasz's eyes narrowed. He did not know the science behind what they were doing, but he could see their intent. They wanted to draw out whatever secrets the amulet carried. If they succeeded, the knowledge or power within it could be twisted for their gain. He clenched his fists. He had promised himself that he would not let the amulet vanish. Now he knew he also could not let it be opened by the wrong hands. But rushing in would be foolish. 5 armed raiders stood only a few steps away from the amulet. He needed more than bravery. He needed timing, patience, and a plan. He crouched low, his eyes sweeping the chamber. He studied the machines, the pipes along the walls, the stacks of crates left in the corners. Some of the old machines still glowed faintly, their panels alive with weak light. Perhaps he could use them. As he thought, the device on the platform sparked. The amulet's glow grew brighter, filling the room with silver light. For a moment, it seemed as if voices whispered in the air, faint and distant, like echoes of the past. The raiders froze, listening, their eyes wide. Tomasz felt a shiver. The amulet was more than memory. It held something alive within it, something that carried the weight of ages. The raiders began to laugh softly, their greed clear. One of them reached forward, but the glow burned hotter, forcing him to step back. Their leader barked an order, and they adjusted the devices again. Tomasz knew he had little time. If they succeeded in controlling the amulet, its power could be lost to darkness. He whispered to himself, steadying his breath. He would wait for the moment when their focus was on the machine, when their guard was low. Then he would strike. For now, he stayed hidden, watching every detail. He saw the way one raider kept his weapon loose at his belt, the way another limped slightly when he moved. He marked each weakness in his mind. The hum of the machines grew louder. Sparks danced across the platform. The silver glow spread into the air, painting the chamber in light. The raiders shouted to each other, caught in their work. Tomasz pressed his hand against the cold wall. He felt the vibration of the machine through the stone. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound steady his heart. Then he opened them again, sharp and clear. He knew the next step would decide everything. Either he would bring the amulet back, or he would fail in silence. The chamber's glow spilled out into the corridor, reaching even where he hid. The light seemed to call him forward, as if the amulet itself wanted to be saved. Tomasz waited in the shadow, his body tense, ready for the moment to act. The hidden place had revealed itself. Now, it was only a matter of time before courage would be tested. The chamber pulsed with silver light from the amulet. The raiders stood close to the platform, their eyes fixed on the glow. The hum of their strange machines filled the space, steady and sharp. Sparks leapt between wires, and faint shapes flickered in the air above the amulet. The raiders whispered quickly, their voices thick with excitement. Tomasz crouched near the doorway, hidden behind the shadow of a broken pillar. His breath was quiet, his body tense. He watched every movement of the raiders, waiting for the chance to act. His heart pounded, but his thoughts stayed clear. He had not followed them this far to turn back. The image of Lyra holding her mother's robe still burned in his mind. The raiders leaned closer to the platform. One pressed a button on the cube device, and the glow of the amulet grew brighter, nearly blinding. Another laughed as a ring of light spread outward, climbing up the dome of the chamber. The patterns on the amulet seemed alive, shifting and moving like stars in motion. Tomasz knew the moment had come. If he waited longer, the raiders might succeed in unlocking whatever power the amulet held. He whispered to himself, steadying his breath, then pushed forward. He moved quickly across the floor, his boots light against the metal. He grabbed a loose pipe lying near the crates and held it in both hands. The sound of the machines covered his steps until he was close enough. Then, with a sharp cry, he swung the pipe against the cube device. The machine cracked, sparks flying across the floor. The hum broke into silence. The sudden shock froze the raiders. They turned at once, their eyes wide with rage. Tomasz stood firm, the pipe raised, his body ready. "You will not take it," he said, his voice steady. The leader snarled and drew a short blade. Two others rushed forward, but Tomasz swung the pipe hard, striking one in the chest. The raider stumbled back into a crate, coughing. Another tried to grab him, but Tomasz turned, using the length of the pipe to keep distance. His movements were not trained like a soldier, but they carried the sharp edge of survival. The amulet slipped from the stand during the struggle, rolling across the platform. Its glow flickered, softer now but still alive. Tomasz's eyes locked on it. He knew he had to reach it. One raider lunged, grabbing Tomasz's arm. The human twisted, pushing with all his strength. He slammed the pipe against the ground, the sound echoing like thunder. The raider fell back, surprised by the force. Tomasz ran toward the amulet. His steps pounded against the platform, each one heavy with determination. He reached down, his fingers closing around the silver chain. The amulet was warm in his hand, almost alive, as if it recognized his touch. The raiders shouted, furious now. Their leader charged forward, blade flashing in the silver light. Tamash stepped back quickly, holding the amulet close to his chest. He raised the pipe again, his stance firm. "I will not give it to you," Tamash said. His voice echoed through the chamber. The leader slashed at him, but Tamash blocked with the pipe. The clash rang loud. His arms shook from the force, but he held steady. He pushed back, forcing the leader a step away. The other raiders circled, unsure for a moment. They had not expected one human to stand against them. Tamash's eyes burned with resolve. His body ached, his breath was heavy, but his will did not break. He moved toward the crates, keeping his back against them so they could not surround him. His grip on the amulet tightened. Each time a raider lunged, he swung the pipe, blocking, striking, never letting them get close enough to tear the amulet away. Minutes felt like hours. His muscles strained, sweat rolled down his face, but still he stood. He shouted once, his voice strong, "This is not yours to take." The raiders faltered. They had weapons, numbers, and strength, yet the human's determination shook them. His will carried a weight they had not faced before. The machines sparked again, broken but not fully dead. The chamber lights flickered. Shadows danced across the walls, and the silver glow of the amulet spread wider. The raiders stepped back, uneasy. The leader hissed an order, but even his voice carried doubt now. Tamash felt the moment shift. He pressed forward, swinging the pipe with all his strength. The leader stumbled, his blade clattering to the ground. Tamash kicked it away and raised the amulet high. Its glow washed across the chamber, bright and pure. The raiders froze. For the first time, their eyes showed fear. The amulet's patterns moved like stars across the human's arm, wrapping him in light. Tamash did not understand it, but he felt its warmth, its strength. It gave him courage beyond his own. He stepped forward, his voice ringing clear. "Go. Leave this place. You will not have it." The leader looked at the human, then at the glowing amulet. His jaw tightened, and with a sharp gesture, he turned. The raiders retreated, their cloaks whipping behind them. They slipped into the shadows of the corridor, their steps echoing as they vanished into the maze of the station. Tamash stood alone in the chamber, the amulet glowing in his hand. His body shook with exhaustion, but his spirit stood tall. He had faced more than he should have been able to, yet he had not broken. He lowered the pipe, letting it fall to the floor with a heavy clang. His breath came slow and deep. He looked at the amulet, its glow now softer, calmer. He whispered to it, "You are safe now." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Only the faint hum of broken machines remained. Tamash closed his eyes, letting relief wash over him. But he knew the task was not yet finished. He had saved the amulet from the raiders, but he still had to bring it back to Lyra and her mother. He tightened the chain around his hand, holding it close. Then, with steady steps, he left the chamber and walked into the dark corridors of the station. The human had fought with nothing but courage, and courage had been enough. The long corridor stretched ahead of Tamash, lit by dim lamps that flickered with tired energy. Each step he took echoed against the metal floor. The weight of the amulet in his hand reminded him why he kept moving, even though his body longed to stop. His arms ached from the fight, and his legs felt heavy, but the thought of Lyra and her mother gave him strength. The broken station seemed quieter now. The noise of the raiders had faded. Only the hum of distant pipes and the whisper of wind through cracked vents followed him. He kept his hand tight around the silver chain, the glow hidden beneath his sleeve. At last, he reached the passage that led back toward the lower market. The air there smelled different, filled with spices, smoke, and the faint sweetness of fruit. The sound of voices grew clearer. The market was still alive, unaware of what had happened deep within the station. Tomasz stepped out into the wide space. Bright banners hung from poles, lanterns swung above stalls, and voices rose as traders called out their offers. The crowd moved in steady waves, shifting like water across the floor. For a moment, Tomasz felt the strangeness of it all. He had just faced danger, yet here, life carried on as if nothing had changed. He searched for the small stall where he had first seen Lyra and her mother. His eyes moved across rows of cloth, shelves of fruit, and piles of trinkets. Then, through the crowd, he spotted her. Lyra stood near the stall, her shoulders tense, her hands clutching the edge of the table. Her eyes scanned the market, searching, waiting. Her mother sat on a low seat behind her, a blanket draped across her lap. Both looked worried, as though they had not rested since the raiders took the amulet. Tomasz moved closer. The crowd parted just enough for him to step through. When Lyra saw him, her eyes widened. She rushed forward, her voice breaking with relief. "You came back," she said. Her words carried hope and disbelief together. Tomasz nodded, lifting his hand. The silver chain glimmered in the lantern light as he revealed the amulet. Gasps rose from those nearby, for even in the crowded market, the glow of the relic drew every eye. Lyra's hands trembled as she reached for it. Tomasz placed the amulet gently in her palms. She held it close, her eyes shining as if the weight of the world had been lifted. "Mother," she whispered, turning. She carried the amulet to the older woman, who looked up with tired eyes. When she saw the relic, tears welled in them. She touched it softly, as though greeting a lost friend. "You have saved it," the mother said. Her voice was weak but filled with gratitude. "You have saved what was left of our past." Tomasz bowed his head slightly. "I only did what I could. It belongs with you." The older woman clasped his hand. Her touch was light but firm. "Few would have risked so much. You are not only brave, but true of heart." The crowd around them had grown. Traders, travelers, and workers leaned closer, whispering to one another. They had heard the tales of raiders moving through the shadows, but to see one human return with a sacred relic made their voices rise in wonder. One man called out, "How did he do it?" Another answered, "With nothing but his own strength." Soon, the whispers turned into a chorus of respect. The market folk bowed their heads slightly as Tomasz stood there, uncertain what to say. He was no hero, yet the weight of their eyes made him feel as though something larger than himself had happened. Lyra looked at him again, her eyes full of meaning. "They will tell this story," she said softly. "That a human faced the raiders and stood unbroken." Tomasz shook his head. "I do not seek stories. I only wanted to keep it from them." "But stories find their way," she replied. The older woman placed the amulet around her neck once more. The silver chain rested against her robe, and the glow seemed calmer now, as if it recognized its rightful place. She closed her eyes for a moment, whispering words in her own tongue, a quiet prayer that none but Lyra understood. The market shifted again. Traders returned to their stalls, yet their voices carried respect now. People glanced toward Tomasz as they passed, nodding slightly in silent thanks. Lyra guided him to a seat beside their stall. She handed him a small cup of warm drink, steam rising into the cool air. "Rest now," she said. "You have carried more than most could bear." Tomasz took the cup and sipped. The taste was strong and bitter, but it soothed his tired body. For the first time since entering the raider's chamber, he allowed himself to breathe deeply. He looked around the market. The lanterns glowed, children laughed near the fruit stalls, and the hum of trade filled the air. Life continued, yet beneath it, something had shifted. Trust had been given to him, and he felt its weight. Lyra sat across from him, her eyes calm now but still bright. "You changed something today," she said. Tomasz tilted his head. "I only returned what was stolen." "Not only that," she replied. "You showed that one can stand even when the odds say no. That is what people will remember." He stayed quiet, thinking about her words. He had fought not for glory, but for what felt right. Yet if others saw meaning in it, perhaps that meaning had value. As the night deepened, the market lanterns grew brighter. Music began to play from a corner, soft and steady. People danced lightly, their steps gentle but full of joy. Even after all the fear, they still found reasons to celebrate. Tomasz sat with Lyra and her mother, sharing simple food. The warmth of their company eased the weight of the day. For the first time, he felt that he belonged in this strange place among strangers who no longer seemed distant. Before sleep came, Lyra's mother spoke again. Her voice was soft but clear. "The amulet has chosen its protector. It will not be forgotten what you have done." Tomasz looked at her, uncertain how to respond. He had no desire for titles or praise. But in her eyes, he saw something deeper, the acknowledgement of a bond, a trust that could not be taken away. That night, under the lanterns of the market, Tomasz rested. The amulet was safe, the raiders were gone, and though tomorrow might bring new trials, he had earned the trust of those who once looked at him as only another traveler. Now, they looked at him as something more. The human who stood against the raiders. Morning came gently over the station. The market stirred awake with the sound of voices and the smell of bread baking in clay ovens. Traders arranged their stalls, children chased each other through the narrow paths, and lanterns from the night were slowly taken down. Life moved forward as it always did, yet there was a new energy in the air. Tomasz walked through the market streets with quiet steps. People nodded as he passed, some even bowing their heads in silent respect. He was still not used to it. He had never thought of himself as special, but after what had happened, the eyes of the people told him he had become something more in their stories. At the small stall, Lyra and her mother were already awake. Lyra was helping set out folded cloths, her hands moving quickly and carefully. Her mother sat nearby, the silver amulet resting against her chest, glowing faintly in the morning light. When she saw Tomasz, she smiled with calm strength. "You slept well?" she asked. Tomasz nodded. "Yes. The night was peaceful." Lyra looked at him with a curious smile. "The market has not stopped speaking about you. Some say you faced 10 raiders, others say 20. The number grows each time the story is told." Tomasz gave a small laugh. "It was not so many. But let them tell it how they wish. If it gives them hope, then perhaps it is good." Her eyes brightened. "Hope is worth more than gold here." The older woman touched the amulet gently, her fingers tracing the symbols. "This relic carries more than memory. It is a key to our history, a reminder of what was lost. But now it is also bound to you. It glowed in your hand, Tomasz, not only in mine." He frowned slightly. I do not understand. I am not of your people. Why would it answer me? Because truth is not bound by blood alone, she said. Sometimes it seeks courage, not lineage. Tomasz thought about the night in the chamber, when the light of the amulet had wrapped around his arm. He had felt strength then, not his own, but something greater. He had not spoken of it to anyone, but hearing her words, he realized she knew already. Before he could answer, a group of traders approached the stall. Their leader was a tall man with long dark robes. He bowed respectfully to Lyra's mother, then spoke with steady words. Honored one, we have gathered to thank the human who risked his life. Without him, the amulet would be lost. We ask that he stand before the market tonight, so all may honor him. Tomasz shook his head quickly. I am no leader. I only did what was right. But the man insisted. Your act has become a beacon. If the raiders return, your courage will remind us we can stand together. Please, let the people see you. Lyra's mother placed her hand on Tomasz's arm. Do not refuse them. Sometimes one must accept a place, not for himself, but for others who need the symbol. Tomasz sighed softly, then nodded. If it helps your people, I will stand. The day passed with the usual rhythm of trade, but the mood was brighter. Music played more often, laughter rose from the stalls, and even the oldest traders smiled at children running past. Word spread quickly that the human would stand before the people that evening. As the sun set, lanterns were lit across the market square. Hundreds gathered, filling the wide space with murmurs and expectation. Tomasz stood near the stall, his heart heavy with nerves. He had faced raiders without fear, but the thought of facing so many eyes made his chest tighten. Lyra stood beside him, her voice calm. You are not alone. Just speak truth. That is enough. When the crowd grew silent, the tall trader in robes raised his hand. People of the market, we gather tonight not in sorrow but in strength. Our relic was taken, but it has been returned. And it was returned by one who had no reason to risk his life except for what was right. A human stood where many would not. Let us hear him now. The people turned toward Tomasz. The lanterns swayed above, casting soft light across the square. He stepped forward, feeling the weight of their eyes. He took a deep breath, then spoke slowly, his voice steady. I am no hero. I am only a man who saw wrong and could not turn away. The raiders thought they could take what was not theirs. But they were wrong. This amulet belongs with those who honor it, not those who would use it for greed. I fought because I believed it should stay with Lyra and her mother. And I will stand again if it is ever threatened. His words were simple, but the silence of the crowd carried their weight. Then, slowly, voices rose in agreement. First a murmur, then a chant, calling his name with respect. The sound filled the square, echoing through the station walls. Lyra looked at him with pride. Her mother touched the amulet, the glow brightening for a moment as if answering the voices. Tomasz felt the warmth again, not only from the relic but from the people around him. The night became a celebration. Music rose, drums beat in rhythm, and dancers filled the square. Food and drink were shared freely, and laughter filled the air. For the first time in many cycles, the market felt united. Tomasz stayed close to Lyra and her mother, watching the joy spread. He realized then that his act had become more than his own. It had sparked something in them all. Later, when the crowd began to thin, Lyra asked him quietly, "What will you do now?" Tomasz looked out at the glowing lanterns. "I do not know. Perhaps I will travel again, perhaps I will stay. But wherever I go, I will remember this place. And if the raiders return, I will be ready. Her smile was soft but certain. Then you are one of us now. The older woman nodded in agreement. You carry the spirit of our people, even if not our blood. The amulet has shown it, and so have you. Tomasz bowed his head. He had not sought belonging, yet it had found him. He felt a quiet peace settle in his heart. As the lanterns burned low and the market grew quiet, Tomasz stood beneath the stars that showed faintly through the cracked ceiling of the station. He thought of the journey that had brought him here, of the danger he had faced, and of the trust he had earned. The amulet glowed faintly in the distance, resting safely on the chest of its rightful keeper. He smiled, knowing it would shine for generations to come, carrying both the memory of a people and the story of the human who fought for them. And so the legacy began.